Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the University of Denver Chancellor Leadership Panel. I welcome parents and, of course, students as we enter into a dialogue about what to expect at the University of Denver when we start up in just a few weeks for the fall quarter here. Let me say, first of all, thank you for joining us. It's a delight to have you as part of the DU family and to be engaged in dialogue with you all, because we know there's a lot of questions that you may have on your mind, questions of what the experience will be like for our students both in and outside of the classroom, how we keep them safe during a dynamic pandemic that we are in, and really what to expect overall from the overarching learning that will happen at the University of Denver. We have a great team with us today, and I'm going to introduce them in just a few moments. But I thought I'd start by just saying a few words about the university. I am so proud and honored to be chancellor here at this university, because this university, and I've been at a number of them, is truly focused on helping our students meet the moment, to build the lives that they desire, to have lives of purpose, and really to improve the world, because they are so driven to do exactly that. Now, this has been a year and a half that has, of course, made an indelible mark on all of us, but it is especially clear how vital that students know how to thrive amid change, to be agile, to build community, to understand their personal role in serving the public good. I am so proud of this university because last year we enabled our students to do exactly that. It was challenging, it wasn't ideal, but I know that students did learn how to thrive. They did build community, and they did understand their role. We celebrated all of their work with wonderful commencement ceremonies throughout the summer. Now, this academic year that lies ahead of us will look much more like normal than we've enjoyed during the virus. In fact, it will look more normal before the COVID pandemic that we experienced. But still, the simple fact is that students need to thrive even in a more normal setting, because we are still in a global pandemic. And here's what DU is committed to. We are committed to a world-class education with dedicated professors. And their interactions with students is really a hallmark of what DU has come to know for. We also are dedicated to a truly unique and memorable college experience in the classroom and outside the classroom. And you're going to learn more of why it is unique and why it stands out. Of course, we're committed to a safe and healthy environment. In fact, that's priority number one for us. And then finally, it becomes so important that we're committed to an equitable and inclusive approach to education. And you'll learn more about what we mean on that. Now, there are North Stars that the panel and I are going to discuss today. And I want to just frame a little bit about those North Stars. The first one I want to say is that at DU, we're making bold choices for a long-term future of this university so that we can continue to serve the next generation of students. This is important because we want the value of a degree from the University of Denver to always improve, so that our alumni have an affinity and are proud of their institution. The second thing I want to tell you as a North Star is we are literally reinventing the student experience by intentionally helping students learn in 4 distinct dimensions. And this is what we call the 4-dimensional experience. We're looking, of course, for an outstanding in-classroom experience, an intellectual dimension of their growth, if you will. But we're also focused on their professional development in careers to really make sure that they have those lives of purpose. We're also focused on promoting wellness, social, emotional, spiritual, physical wellness, and even financial literacy. The last one I really want to emphasize, though, of course, is exploring character, because in this environment that we find ourselves with so much polarization, there is a need for us to really think about our values and make sure that our behaviors are in line with those. And these are areas we want students to reflect on and really think about. And as part of that, we'll be emphasizing a civil dialogue, a civil discourse as absolutely essential to exploring that character. Now, we're also very much dedicated to establishing a diverse, inclusive, equitable, and welcoming community. We have a very ambitious diversity, equity, inclusion plan. We've initiated a number of Native American and Indigenous programs and initiatives we want to see. We've got our Black community initiatives, and we have always ongoing work to end sexual assault and gender violence. So we take our equity and inclusivity role extremely important. We're modeling what it means to be globally engaged as a research university by seeking new ways of doing and collaborating and discovering. And the students will have an opportunity to work with those faculty members on that research that they do. So that'll be a really important experiential component of students' lives. And then finally, we're always looking at our portfolio of academic programs to really make sure that they meet the needs of our students and, of course, the needs of our society as well. And there's exciting new programs that are on the horizon that we're offering. This is a very complex time that we're living in, but I'm so proud of this university because it is dedicated to serving the public good. It is rare to see a private university be so dedicated, and it is super apparent in so many different programs that you see on campus. I'm sure that when your student is there, they will be excited to be a part of a university serving that public good. I'd like to make sure that I introduce our panelists today. We just have a wonderful team of leaders that will share their thoughts with you today. I'm going to start with Mary Clark, our Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor.
Hello.
We have Jennifer Karras, Vice Provost of Academic Affairs. Todd Adams is our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs.
Good evening.
Shana Alston is our Executive Director of Housing and Residential Education. Chris Whitt is our Vice Chancellor for the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion.
Hey, everyone.
Sarah Watamura is our COVID Response Coordinator and Professor and Chair of our Department of Psychology. And Mike Holt is our Interim Director of Campus Safety. Now, you're going to be hearing from all of these through the course of the next 50 minutes or so, and we will have time for questions and answers that you may have. I am so excited about this conversation, so I'm not going to waste any more time. I just want you to know that if your question doesn't get answered today, please feel free to reach out afterwards, and we'll do our best to answer questions on social media or on Instagram or Twitter. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and I encourage you to follow that as well. Let's get started, everyone. So I'm going to start with our Provost, Mary Clark. So Mary, it's kind of a two-part question, really. I want you to convey to the audience what you're so excited about in this fall, because it's a special fall quarter that we have, and really help, I think, the audience members know what they can expect as a mix of in-person learning that will be different from last year, say, for example, and whether we're offering a mix of remote learning together with that.
Terrific. So I'll start by saying, those of you who are wondering what is a provost, I am the Chief Academic Officer at DU. So I work very closely with the faculty and with students to design and execute on our curriculum, as well as our research and teaching and service. So very glad to address any questions you might have in that regard. With a particular regard to the Chancellor's question, what am I excited about? I'm excited about being in person, quite frankly. I began last summer and am so excited about folks coming back to campus and to being in community with everyone who's on this screen and everyone who is watching from home. So that's what I'm most excited about. In terms of what we learned from last year's experience for application moving forward, at the undergraduate level, what we learned is the real desire that our undergraduate students have to be in person. And we are so excited about that and have embraced that in terms of our instructional choices for the fall. More than 95% of our instruction will be delivered in person for the fall quarter. What we learned at the graduate level was that many of our graduate students, graduate and professional, I should say, found it helpful to have a choice of modalities in terms of the format for their instruction. Our graduate and professional students are often trying to integrate jobs and their education, or family life and their education, or all three. And they found that having choices as to instructional modality was helpful. We again are responding to that. The Chancellor and I charged the deans of the various graduate schools to work with their faculty and their communities to determine the optimal mode of delivery of their curriculum. And where we've landed is that approximately 63% of our graduate education this fall quarter will be delivered in person and 37% online. And in many of these situations, it will be a combination of the both. So why don't I break off there? I think I'm introducing Jennifer Karras. Dr. Karras is our Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, and I'm so delighted to work with Jennifer. And a question that we had for you, Jennifer, relates to FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It's something that our parents on the screen may become aware of over time, but it would be terrific if you could help share with us what it means and what its impact is.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. And as Provost Clark has said, I'm the Vice Provost for Academic Affairs. So getting into curriculum and policy is my jam. So talking about FERPA, we can have a whole long conversation about that, but I'll try to limit my comments to only the most fascinating pieces. So as a parent of 2 college students and 1 in high school, I can tell you the world changes in terms of the way that information is communicated once your child matriculates into university. So for instance, my darling 15-year-old got a 93% on her English essay. I was just notified on my phone by that kind of instantaneous, that portal that comes through. So that's really great. So again, what a brilliant child. So great for Sarah. We don't know. I don't know what happens for my students who are in college. So once a student turns 18, their educational record becomes their own. And so we do not push that information out to parents as an institution, right? The Family and Educational Right to Privacy, we are protecting their right to academic privacy. And so a lot of times parents say, well, how do I find out what my student is doing? And I will tell you that the tried and true best method is to ask them, right? Really engage them in a conversation. They miss you, you're missing them. Ask them a question. How are things going? How did your organic chemistry lab go? As fascinating as that might be, right? How did that test go? And they'll share with you that kind of information and what they're comfortable with doing. We do not send grades home. We do not send midterms grades home. And so it's really like it's the version of HIPAA for educational records. There is a way for students to actually waive that right if they would like to. If they would say, you know what, I'm not really good at sharing, or I want my parents to be able to have access to that information. They can go into their educational portal, just like they've done in high school. That's a portal like many of our students have had in high school, where they can say, I will allow my parent to have access to my billing information or to my academic information. Remember, billing is still part of their educational record, no matter who is actually paying for it. And so that is something that is possible for you to have that conversation with your student. They have to specify exactly who and for what purpose. And so it's easy to say all records or all academic records or whatever that might be. But again, we really encourage that open dialogue, that open conversation that you have with them. I think that's the best way for everybody to feel included and involved. And even if your child, your student does sign that waiver, we still don't push that information out. It just gives us permission to share with you when you make an inquiry. So the world is a little bit different once they step on our campus, but really this isn't. We really want them to take agency, right, of what their journey will be through university. And so as you all are sitting and thinking about what this experience is going to be, I want to tell you about a few other things in addition to the curriculum that I nerd out on here at the university. I have the privilege of working with our faculty and our staff on some of those experiences in and out of the classroom that have an extraordinary benefit for your students. And those are things like our honors program or our leadership communities, our living and learning communities, the first year seminar program, our undergraduate research center, and our center for community engagement to advance the scholarship and learning, our community engaged pedagogical center. So if you have questions on any of those, please feel free to put them right in the chat and I'll do my best to do that. Okay. So the next question is going to go to my colleague, Todd Adams, who is our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. But here's the deal, Todd. I was really nervous about my question, so I have it all typed out and answered right here. I don't have your question. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and I know you know what question you were supposed to be asked. So I apologize for letting you all down there.
You are
me like you always do.
You are great, Dr. Karras. And what Jennifer did not offer is she and I in common think this is the absolute best time of the year. We are so excited about the start of a new year, move-in day, discoveries, and really welcoming students back. And much like the Provost and the Chancellor have already offered, we're so excited to be back and have opportunities to engage and be in person. My question was really centered around the four-dimensional student experience and also some other programming that we have to look forward to this year. And Chancellor Haefner did a lovely job talking about those four dimensions. And for us, it's really about how they help our students lead lives of meaning and purpose. And it enables them to thrive, not only while they're here, but as they go on to what's next. And that can be a plethora of things. And these dimensions, again, it's advancing intellectual growth, promoting well-being, exploring character, and pursuing careers and lives of purpose. What's unique, you may say, well, those happen in any number of institutions. It's how we think intentionally through the kinds of programs, initiatives, and collaborations. And Dr. Karras just mentioned several of them as she was talking. Those are things that your student will have each and every day. And this year, I'm particularly looking forward, I think, to four things related to 4D. Number one, we have several of our first year seminar courses that will be embedding the four dimensions in the curriculum, in the work that they're doing in the classroom, enabling students to begin very early making the connections between what I'm learning and how I go about using what I'm learning in ways. So intellectual and personal development in ways that can be brought forth through exploration and maybe through experiential opportunities. So those are things that those classes will do. When we think about careers and lives of purpose, we are working with our alumni and career advancement team, and we're thinking very strategically about getting students early connected into mentorship programs in ways that they might be able to facilitate conversations and discussions with our alums who have obviously leveraged their DU education and experience into a career or into something post-DU. And we're excited to partner with academic affairs, certainly with career advancement, career and professional development to do that. With well-being, we're working very collaboratively across academic affairs, athletics, and then student affairs and inclusive excellence to think about new places that we can take forth those aspects of well-being and a holistic approach to well-being as the chancellor offered, and create places on campus and perhaps in classes, but also in a lot of places that would be outside of the traditional classroom or lab setting to promote a sense of well-being. And that includes spiritual and financial, as well as the emotional and the physical that we've been talking about. And so that partnership is going to bear some significant fruit this year as we stand up some new places and some new programs on campus. And our students are already excited about leveraging those opportunities. And I think the last one involves character. And that can be the thing that people say, well, how are you going to explore that? How are you going to give people an opportunity? We do it in a multitude of ways, through student employment, through clubs and organizations and student leadership opportunities. And one that I'm particularly excited about this year is partnering with a Daniels College of Business faculty member, along with student affairs staff, to do a 3-part session on character and ethical leadership and how students can explore that through their curriculum, but also co-curricularly. And it'll involve community leaders. It'll involve many of the people that are here speaking to you tonight in helping to advance that for our students and give them some real world application. And so those are things that I'm particularly excited about, among many others related to how we're standing up the 4 dimensions, and not just individually, but really how they collectively and integratively provide markers for students along their educational path. Some programs that we're doing this year that you should know, and right before this call, I checked, and we already have 98 events and activities scheduled in the first 2.5 weeks after move-in. And more to come. Tonight, we're meeting with registered student organization leaders. And once we go through the training, they'll be promoting a number of programs and events in the coming days and weeks. And Crimson Connect is a way in which students are able to find and locate different events, programs, and activities, particularly hosted by their peers, but not exclusively. And that's a place where they will connect in any number of ways. This year during Discoveries, we have dances, we have a comedian, we have opportunities to go out into the community, even with faculty members. Throughout the first couple of weeks, our fraternities and sororities are going to be hosting a carnival. We'll have a student activities fair with up to 150 student clubs and organizations. We're very excited this year about homecoming. It'll be maybe the first time in a couple of years that we've been able to celebrate in the way that we're looking forward to. And during that time, we're going to also open officially, even though the building has been open since January, the community commons, and have a great celebration, music and food and festivities. So we're looking forward to all of those things. And that's really just in the fall. Certainly being engaged with our 17 varsity sports and our student athletes, and being able to support any number of our DU teams is another opportunity that we have this fall and throughout the year. So we're terrifically excited about the year ahead, and we can't wait for students to arrive. With that, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Sarah Watamura. And what to say about Sarah other than she is indeed the best in the business, and among other things, is sitting here tonight as our COVID coordinator and really oversees our COVID response. And it has been a heck of a year. Many of you may have joined earlier today when we spent some significant time specifically around COVID. And I do know that on the Chancellor's website, we'll post the recording of that session. So probably won't be tonight, but in the next day or two, it'll be there. We may not go into as much detail tonight, but I really want to acknowledge Sarah and her team and pose a question. You know, Sarah, we all are incredibly proud, and I couldn't do the work that I do without you and your incredible team. I really, everyone needs to hear that and know that. I'm curious what lessons maybe you've and your team are bringing forth from the year that we've had, the successes, and there have been many, and also some of the things that we've learned that might help us as we enter into this new and different school year.
Thank you, Todd, for that kind introduction. I'm happy to talk about lessons learned and how last year went for us and the adaptations for this year. So I would say one of the early decisions we made that turned out to be really important was to partner with National Jewish Health, which is the leading respiratory hospital in the United States, and they are local. We have worked with them on all of our policies, our testing, and our vaccination efforts, and they continue to be we're in daily communication with them, and they are ready partners on all the things that we do. Another thing that's been really important for us is that we have stayed nimble, and we have built from the beginning, we have really built our approach to be nimble, to be able to move forward and backward in terms of the level of access and openness in a very graded way. And you can look at that, how that works by looking at our alert levels on our website. That nimbleness has also been very data driven. So we've used lots of data that we've collected internally, as well as looking at local, state, national, and international data to drive those decisions. One example of that is after the fall term, we looked at all of our data and the data from 98 schools, did some structured interviews, and determined that the one technique we have not been using as aggressively as others that seemed to make a difference was testing. So we stood up our own lab on campus to support additional testing. And that is one of the really important tools that we have that help us be very confident in the level of positivity on campus and to move very quickly if there is a positive. We have great partnerships with both the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment and the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. We are thought partners with them and responsive to all of the guidance that they provide. And that has also helped us be nimble and responsive, and frankly allowed us to have some measure of autonomy because we are a trusted partner with them. We have required vaccination. We were in the first 20 schools to require vaccination. And that we have given folks lots of time to work on that. We currently have 93.4% of our population fully vaccinated. So that's at least 2 weeks past their vaccination date. We have about 3.7% of folks that we still don't have complete records for. So we're working through that. That means we have just under 4% of folks with exemptions. The exemptions we've allowed to date have included medical, religious, and due to the fact that there was not a fully FDA approved vaccine, but of course that changed on Monday. And so we will be reaching out to folks with that exemption to help support their vaccination now that that has gone through. In terms of vaccination, we also provided 31,000 doses of vaccine here on campus, both to our community and with extensive outreach to assist providing vaccination to people who may not have as ready access to that resource. So overall, lots of successes. I think those successes put us in a good position to adjust to the changing world. So to the fact that we have new variants, to the fact that we have a highly vaccinated population, because we're nimble, data-driven, and working in partnership. And then it was on my list to address, what do you really need to do? What's the take home? What do you need to do to get here on campus? So it's really just two things. You need to upload your vaccine record to the My Health portal and have that acknowledged in time. The hard deadline for that is September 1st. So please do that if you haven't done it yet. And you need to test on campus the day 1 or 2 days before your planned start. So if you're planning to move in on the 6th, test on the 5th or the 4th. Yes, we are open on the weekend. And if you are planning to start on September 13th, test on the 12th or the 11th. If you cannot do that and you have to test the day you start, that will be accommodated, but you'll have to quarantine while you wait for your test result. Fortunately, we have a great testing system and we generally are able to result in about 8 hours. So that's the two big pieces, and then follow the alert levels so that you know what other rules might be in place. And those are all available, and all of our protocols and policies are transparent and public facing. So parents are welcome to look at those at any time, as are all members of our community. I have the pleasure of introducing my new colleague, Chris Whitt, and he is our new Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and we're so excited to have him join our community. And as what I see as your question is, could you talk a little bit about more details about what we're doing now, including the DEI action plan, and why you see that as so vital to our community?
Thanks, Sarah. I definitely I'm happy to be here. I've been here, as might have been mentioned, since April. And, I think that it's definitely been a good getting to know one another period between myself, my colleagues. I had the opportunity before the end of the school year to interact with some student groups. I'm really looking forward to now being able to interact with many more student groups, individual students, and other gatherings of students, and hopefully in many cases in person. This is going to be the first time that DU starts a school year with a permanent vice chancellor for diversity, equity, and inclusion in place. And, I really take that responsibility as something that is really important to the future of DU. And when we think about the DEI action plan that so many of my colleagues, some folks on this screen, other people across the university put a lot of effort and a lot of goodwill into prior to my arrival, is something that is part of the portfolio that I need to continue for the university to really make sure that these commitments to DEI in terms of the ways in which they can best serve students, as well as best serve the university in terms of making it resilient and strong moving into the future, that these things happen. I won't go into every part of the DEI action plan, but a few key areas that we're really taking some focus on is really leaning into how we talk about and understand diversity, equity, and inclusion. That when I got here, I was very happy to find out that we had so many people in so many different corners of the university, in some cases in student facing roles, in other cases more operational roles, but really a broad engagement in DEI and lots of energy being put into it. But in some cases, because those efforts had kind of bubbled up organically over time, in some cases doing very similar work, but using different terminology, going about it in some different ways. And one of the things that we're really focusing on within my division is really working with our partners across the university, working with students and student groups to make sure that we're not talking past one another. That we recognize that we're on the same page, or we can get there and we can really move forward shoulder to shoulder as an entire DU community. We also have part of the plan is really giving diversity, equity, and inclusion power, authority, and accountability. And in that is really, goes a step further in really the ways in which we organize, the ways we talk about that, but really in many cases, formalizing relationships, formalizing ways in which we really work together across the various divisions in the university, across various academic disciplines, schools, and colleges to say, well, these are some ways in which we expect one another to engage. These are the ways in which we aim to best serve the university. So we're really leaning into that and looking for the best ways that we can organize communication in that, because a big part of that really is communicating who's doing what, who's not doing what, and where can we fill in blanks, as well as where can we really avoid repetition of action and energy. We're really looking for we're looking forward to leaning into having a more organized approach to training and support of people across DU, and that really folds into some of the things that we talked about earlier. In the beginning, the Chancellor talked about some of the things that are part of this plan in terms of our Black Community Advisory Board. That effort has had a very strong beginning in terms of pulling folks together across the community that will be in the Denver community, alums, faculty, staff, current students, and a number of other folks to really lean into supporting that community and really building a model for extending support to other communities. And we also have far too many to list good engagements when it comes to our Native American community, and lots of efforts moving forward, in particular DU as an entire entity really working strongly with the Cheyenne and Arapaho people and looking forward to our Sand Creek Memorial, as well as a number of other efforts. So The plan is strong, and I think that it really does fold into a broader vision of us thinking about how we can be as creative as possible, as well as open as possible in what we consider diversity, in terms of really looking at all the different intersecting identities that make up our student body, that make up the members of our faculty and our staff, in terms of race, sexuality, age, first generation status, ethnicity, religion. We could keep going down the list, but recognizing that each of us bring that composition of whoever we are. We're made out of these different identities, and we have different lived experiences that we bring to the table. But the big goal for us at DU, in particular when we look through a DEI lens, is figuring out the best ways that we can create a space that is really a destination of choice, where people, however they choose to engage with DU, they feel like they can thrive in being their full and authentic selves. That we can have this national reputation for being that type of space, that we can be a leader in Colorado as well as the rest of our region, where we really stand out when people look on a map and they end up wanting to see a university where they can go and they don't have to compromise their identity or their intersecting identities. We want to be that type of place. So it's always a work in progress, but that's the trajectory for the vision that we're working on.
Chris, thank you so much. So inspiring to hear you say that. I'm going to keep us going here. So I'm going to turn to Mike Holt. Mike, you and your team do an incredible job at protecting the community and really keeping them informed. Can you just talk through to the audience briefly, what are the duties of the campus safety officers, and how do you envision campus safety interacting with our students?
Sure, thank you. First off, we're a service-oriented department, so we're here to help. We're not here to get folks into trouble or anything like that. We're here to help. We patrol the campus by car, by bike, and by foot, and we do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Weekends and holidays, we're here. We have a communication center. That's our dispatch center, where we take all of our phone calls and our radio traffic flows through there. And that also is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can access that communication center and us by calling 303-871-3000. When you're around the campus, you're going to see a number of call boxes, the blue phones. Those phones are, they used to be called emergency phones, but we call them assistance stations because we want you to use those phones anytime you need assistance. So if you need answers to questions or directions or anything like that, just feel free to press the button. Just think of it as your personal Siri or your Google Assistant. We'll be happy to help you with answering questions. We also maintain the fire alarms, the burglar alarms, and the card access system. You're going to become very aware of the card access system because you can't get into buildings without your ID card, and those little squares on the doors, we maintain those. There are four things that I like to say to incoming students and their parents, and these are the high things I think that'll keep you safe. Todd mentioned that about all of the fun activities that's going to be on campus and off campus, and we want you to have fun. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive to hear a campus safety officer saying that they want you to have fun, but I want you to have fun. But I also want you to be safe. So in doing that, please, please, please watch the drug and alcohol use. I know that's part of the deal, and I know it's going to happen. So just, take it easy on that. If you leave with a group from campus, and if you feel comfortable with that group, make a pact to come back with that group. No one gets left. So if you do that, that's another thing to keep you safe. If you see something, say something. If you get into this internal battle of whether you should call campus safety when you're on campus or call 911 when you're off campus, that automatically tells you that you should call. So please call. You're not disturbing anyone. And finally, sign up for the emergency alerts, DU alerts, and you can find the sign up information at du.edu/campus safety, and go under the emergency preparedness tab, and you can kind of sign up from there. So those are the things that I think that'll keep you safe. And I'll go ahead and pass it on to Shana Austin. She's our Executive Director of Housing and Residential Education. So Shana, the majority of the students in our audience today will be living on campus, and we know that the residential student experience is unique and often deeply meaningful. Can you talk through what they might expect and the resources and support that's available to them to make this important transition?
Thank you, Mike. Yes, we're excited to welcome back over 2,700 residential students who will be joining us on campus starting on Labor Day. And so one of the major resources that students could look to connecting with is our phenomenal staff team, which is comprised of our master's level resident directors, our graduate resident directors, and they will also experience and connect with peer support, which will be offered by our student staff of both resident assistants and community assistants, who all live amongst our students in residence. Our team is really excited to support students as they transition into living on campus, to connect them with their fellow students, and to make sure that they are experiencing everything that the DU campus community has to offer and the local Denver community. Lastly, I would like to share with everyone, this year we are taking a curricular approach in housing and residential education, and we're really focusing on 3 goals this academic year to support the 4-dimensional experience and to also actualize our mission of cultivating individuals and inclusive communities. So those 3 goals that we're focusing on are: the first one is exploring frameworks to navigate one's educational experience. So we'll be there to support your student when they're looking for academic support and resources and thinking about how this work can connect to their careers. Secondly, we will be developing mentoring relationships. We want your student to really feel like they have support here on campus, and that support might come from our residential life staff, but it also might come from others around the campus community. And then lastly, we want your students to focus on relating to others and understanding one's place in the community. It's really important that your student feels a sense of belonging, especially after the 1.5 years that we just had, and we're going to do everything in our power to facilitate that for them. So that is what we're hoping to provide and create an amazing residential experience for our students this year.
Thank you, Shane. Whoops. Thank you, Shana. Well, that's our panelists. They have just done a marvelous job at casting a wide net and hopefully answered many of the questions that you have. Please feel free to add any questions in the Q&A. I think what you're seeing here is some answers coming by our panelists as they type in. So they're talented folks that can multitask at the same time. I'm going to turn to Jennifer Karras. Jennifer, I love your passion about the work that you do, so keep it up. That's just fabulous. I think there could be some questions around advising, and that's under your shop, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. We have a web of advising system here at the university that we have both staff advisors and we have faculty advisors. And so remember, for our first-year students, they have registered for a first-year seminar, and that is led by a faculty member who will teach them a class in their first quarter, but then is their advisor for the full year. So that faculty advisor is already assigned. That was the question that I got in the chat. So that's what we have. And the other question, this was someone who was right up my alley, asking me all the great academic questions. Will all classes be physically live? As Provost Clark started us off with, at the undergraduate level, we know that 95% of our undergraduate classes will be taught in that in-person modality. So we do have a few classes because of pedagogical reasons that have always been taught in more of an online format, but the vast majority of your students' classes are taught in an in-person situation. The add drop period, because remember we're on the quarter system, so that is 10 weeks in the fall term. So the add drop period is the first week of classes. So we want students to be able to get in and have a great experience in that class and not have to play catch up. We want them settled in their coursework in that very first week. And so because of that, we super staff are advising for drop-ins during orientation in case somebody is very nervous about their schedule and just want to talk it out with somebody. And then also in that first week of classes, we have very we have wonderful academic advisors in the central advising office for all of our students. Let's see the other one. And then once a student finishes that first year, they will transition into a major, and then they'll transition to a faculty major advisor. I hope I hit that.
Jennifer, this is Todd. Can you say a little bit more about where students can find their staff advisor, their academic advisor, where you have the open hours and you sort of stack additional services?
Absolutely. And Todd is queuing me up to talk about the most amazing building where his office is located. I do love my office, but it's in one of the older buildings on campus. But so the Community Commons is this amazing centrally located building where it was constructed with the idea of students wandering through and finding resources throughout the different floors that are there, finding other students, finding amazing food opportunities, but also connecting with academic advising, with study abroad advising, with folks in the Sustainability Center, in the Green Room. There are all kinds of student organizations and club offices that are there. And of course, you can find Todd Adams' office there as well. I did one just popped up from a parent that said, my kid said he's going to have classes 7 days a week. And so I would love to be able to chat with your student, because we do not offer classes 7 days a week at the undergraduate level. I think they might be reading something a little bit, it's the first time that we're looking at schedules. And so typically students will take between 3 and 4 classes, and they are offered generally between Monday at 8 a.m. and Friday. If they have a Friday lab, it'll end usually around 4. So there might be a little bit of a confusion thing that's going on there. So that's a great reason to stop by the Academic Advising Center in the Community Commons.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm going to turn to Sarah here because there's some more questions on COVID. And before I do, just remind everyone that the trifecta of tools that we have are vaccinations, testing, and of course our protocols attached to each level alert, including masking. I just want to put a plug in for testing. Testing really matters. It was what made the difference for us last year. I'm going to be testing every week. I just did mine yesterday. It's very easy to do with the saliva test that Sarah mentioned, and the results come back within hours. So it's a great way to feel confident that you're safe and secure. So Sarah, talk a little bit about masks, because I think there's some questions on that one as well.
Sure. So I can answer the question about what happens if you test positive, as well as about masks. So we determined, as I mentioned before, nimbleness is a big part of the way we approach this. We've been able to maintain really great conditions on campus, even when conditions in Denver have been difficult. And so we like to have the ability to maintain our flexibility. At this time, we are in alert level green. In alert level green, masks are required indoors in groups of 5 or more and in classes, unless you are the person instructing the class or a student presenting to the entire class at the front, and the classroom accommodates 6 feet distancing, which is true for many of our classes. If you are fully vaccinated. If you are not fully vaccinated, then you are required to wear a mask at all times indoors, except in your personal residence, while actively eating and drinking, or in a private study room. If we change to alert level blue, which is 1 level up from here, then that would increase it to wearing a mask in groups of 3 or more. With respect to what happens if you test positive, so if you test positive on campus, we follow the requirements of the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment and isolate individuals. Isolate is a funny misnomer. So when you are isolated, you can be with other people who have also tested positive. When you are exposed and you quarantine, that's the one where you have to be by yourself. So somebody mix that up. If you test positive and you go into isolation, we building on campus for that purpose. And we provide physical health, emotional health support to students while they are in isolation. They get medical check-ins from the Health and Counseling Center. And we have the ability to support students' mental health as well. And as I mentioned, they are not, they can be in the building with other people who have tested positive. We would at this time only have to quarantine students who are not fully vaccinated and are close contacts. In that case, they are alone. But we also provide support for mental and physical health, and we have licensed clinicians supervising the mental health support. We have an animal-assisted therapy program and various other supports we've been able to do.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'm going to turn back to Mike. I think there were some questions on walking escorts, which I think is a really important service that our campus safety provides. Mike?
We'll perform escorts any time of the day or night, so it doesn't have to be after hours to walk a community member to on-campus location. We'll walk or ride if the circumstances dictate a community member to an on-campus location, and sometimes to the very near off-campus. We'll do escorts there as well.
Thank you, Mike. And it looks like there's some questions that either Provost Clark or Vice Provost Karras could answer there in the chat about books or physical books or options to buy electronic textbooks, and guidance on opportunities and experiences for winter term. I know that's in Jennifer's court, so.
Okay, you caught me. I was trying to type and listen, and so now I'll talk. So I'll talk first about books. And so it really is entirely up to the faculty member, and faculty members do a mix. They do some things that are some electronic textbooks and some books that are physical copies that are in there. And so once the student knows their schedule, we actually have a link in their schedule. They can look at the bookstore and see what that situation will look like for their particular schedule. And as for interterm is this really fabulous opportunity that we have for students that is actually in between the terms. And so, as I said before, we're on the quarter system. So we begin around Labor Day, and then we end right before Thanksgiving. That leaves this beautiful 6-week time period between Thanksgiving and the Christmas holidays. We return again right after the New Year's, but many students wish to take advantage of that. That's a prime opportunity for students. In the past, we've done lots of short-term study abroad trips. We are planning and hoping that we can do something like that in this term. We have several trips that we are hoping that will fly. If not, we are looking at. We also have many classes that stay here in Denver, and other ones that are experiential in Denver, other ones that are more traditional. If a student would like to get a leg up and take a math class or take a writing class, we have some traditional classes that are offered. They are offered also on a smaller scale, offered in that week between winter and spring break, or in that spring break period. Sometimes some travel classes, sometimes some on-campus classes. And then, of course, we have a plethora of classes in that summer term as well. So.
And Jennifer, how many classes typically do first-year students take in a quarter?
Students usually take about 3 or 4 classes. And so I would say if your student is very anxious or is really wanting to find out what it's going to feel like on that quarter system, 3 is perfectly fine. 4 is what most folks are taking. You know, if you need to average about 15 credits per quarter to graduate with no to graduate on time, and 4 classes is 16. So you can take a few quarters at 12 credits and still be perfectly fine and perfectly ahead of schedule. So.
Terrific, terrific. There's a question in the Q&A about one of our hallmark programs, and that's our study abroad program. We typically send 70%, 75% of our students on study abroad experiences. Of course, this darn COVID thing has interrupted some of that, but we are looking forward to returning that as quickly as possible. And we are sending students on study abroad this fall. So we're very excited to see them back engaged with that. There is a question though, when do students start talking about study abroad? And I will say it's never too soon to start talking about study abroad. It's one of our most exciting features that we have here at the University of Denver. Provost Clark, why don't we start with you? Give us a little insight about what study abroad's like, and then and then maybe Jennifer can talk about advisors and talking about study abroad as well.
Sure, glad to do so. And it is never too soon to start thinking about study abroad, because among other things, as Jennifer will address, you want to integrate it into your academic programming. But it's a wonderful opportunity here at DU. It really is a hallmark element of our student experience. About 740 students go abroad in the fall quarter in a given year. This year it is less, of course, because of COVID. We're looking at about 400 students who are studying abroad in the fall quarter, but typically about 730, 740. And they go all around the world, literally to every continent, whether it's New Zealand, whether it's Thailand, whether it's Chile, whether it's Germany, or otherwise. We have students learning about cultures and languages and ways of being in all of these different spaces and more. We have study abroad programs with partner institutions, partner universities, and then we also have study abroad programs whereby a student has determined what works best for their academic and co-curricular interests, and we support both approaches. But I'll just conclude by saying it is a hallmark opportunity for students really to learn about themselves and about other cultures as they travel abroad. I would encourage students to reflect as much as possible on what they have learned about themselves and about others in this new setting. It is challenging, it can be uncomfortable, and that's where the growth occurs. So over to you, Jennifer, about the advising related to study abroad and how students learn to integrate that into their overall academic picture.
Absolutely. This is a hallmark of the university. So all of our advisors are really equipped to help you out with that, your academic advisor, your staff advisor, but we also have some specific study abroad advisors. And because of the beautiful design of the community commons, your academic advisors and the study abroad advisors are in the same office, right? So we can literally walk across the hall and have you talk with somebody as you're thinking about what to study, where to go. One thing I'd love to highlight that's actually pretty unique about the University of Denver is we have programs where students may study abroad in their senior year in particular programs. So in Lund in Sweden and at University of Western Australia that's in Perth, where you may study abroad for your 4th year and receive your degree from the University of Denver, your undergraduate degree, but then may stay for another year at that institution and receive your master's degree from a Lund or from a University of Western Australia. So these amazing 4+1 opportunities in particular subject matters. That's not something that's very common. And again, this is because of the deep regard we have for learning across culture, learning globally. So I really encourage you to think early about what study abroad options might be right for you.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. And thank you all. We are at time, and I want to respect everyone's evening here. For our audience members, I hope that we did as best of a possible job to answer so many of your questions. There were terrific questions. And it's just an indication that I think there's some excitement for your student to come to the University of Denver. For our panelists here, I couldn't be more pleased with the enthusiasm, the professionalism, the collegiality that you see here. I hope in some sense that this session has conveyed to you a great deal of excitement that we all have for welcoming your student here at the University of Denver, and confidence that they'll be safe and healthy and, of course, well educated. And with that, I thank you all for joining us. We wish you a very well and happy evening. And especially we look forward to welcoming you and your student here at the University of Denver. Thanks for joining us, everybody.